Welcome back to Secret Leaders and Merry Christmas, everyone.
So this Christmas, we have made the Secret Leaders book collection. So we're bringing together the best ideas, like our best books. This is like not an ad at all. These are genuinely Dan and I's favorite books across a few key topics. I would say that some of the books we're talking about today have been like instrumental, completely formative in my life. I talk about them all the time. And funnily enough, your books as well, like especially one of them is one of my favorite books ever. So I'm so pleased to see that. And we're giving this entire collection to one of you at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for how we're doing the giveaway and let's get into it.
So, who wants to go first, me or Christmas Donnelly?
I think you go first because you've really leaned into Christmas here with the hat.
Well, I wouldn't say I leaned in. I'd say that you've leaned out.
I didn't have a hat.
It's Christmas.
I didn't have a hat.
Do you want a hat?
Look, I mean, if you're going to throw me a hat off camera.
Let's throw him a hat. Yeah.
I will see if it's
Special hat.
My incredibly
Big
large head.
Wow.
Right.
That's a vibe, mate.
I don't know if I'm going to record the whole episode like this.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how you get on.
Yeah.
Okay. So a bit of a weird way to start an episode with physical books. Because my book, we're starting with a category of guest books. So our favorite guest books that have come in on the show and et cetera, et cetera. My guest book is not on the stack. That's probably quite annoying. I'm sorry. But there is a good excuse. The book is, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
What's Your Dream by Simon Squibb.
He does say that a lot.
He does. So, What's Your Dream by Simon Squibb? The reason it's not on the stack, by the way, is because he's actually very kindly offered to send us a signed version for this prize.
For this giveaway.
Yep. So
it's very cool.
Yeah, very cool. So you're going to get an even better version than this digital version that someone is going to superimpose into my hand in the edit. Sorry, Alex, making you do that now. I'll tell you what I like about What's Your Dream. I have a bit of a personal story here that Simon does himself admit and tell. When I first met Simon, it was during COVID. He didn't really have any followers and I'd just started Heights. We were living close to each other. I lived in Camden. He lived in Belsize Park. We walked near each other a lot. And so we went on these walks. He was telling me about this book that he was writing. This book, but a slightly different version of it.
It's evolved probably, yeah.
Yeah, and it was not good. And I basically told him very directly, I don't think this is good. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think it's unique. And also, I think that because a lot of my friends are authors, I was like, also, if you genuinely want a good book deal with a publisher, if you don't have an audience already, or you don't have like personal brand leverage or expertise, like someone like Angela Duckworth, for example, you're a professor in university, if you don't have those things, you don't get paid, you don't get a big offer up front from the publisher. And the less they offer you for the book, ironically, not the more they put into marketing because they're seeing some kind of connection there, the less they pay you, the less they market it. So it's kind of not worth your time. And what I would do is just hold off on that book. You don't need the book and the world doesn't need another book right now. We had a long chat about the book. Last year, he basically got in touch with me and was like, I've redone the book. I want you to read the early version of it, etc., etc. You were completely right. I really appreciated that. He's got big contract, big publisher, loads of marketing dollars. His first book, he'd written it. It was similar, but not the same. Could have been much worse. Yeah. And there's no real problem with that. Maybe he did the first one and then he does this one, whatever. But I feel like there's a personal connection there. Yeah. So I read that with a bit of pride.
And now, like, Simon is fucking
huge. Yeah. It's insane.
And I feel like it's not just that he's big now. Like, even when I met him, January 2023, before when we all met and started making content at the same time, such a weird WhatsApp group that was. But he wasn't big. None of us were big. And yet his growth has been good the whole way through, but recently
exponential.
Like he's completely taken off.
That is a great story, and his focus on consistency has been amazing. So the book is kind of like a modern day Rich Dad Poor Dad, essentially. It teaches you a lot about like the way to think about financial literacy, owning your choices, and obviously following your dreams, following your passion. And trying to basically put good momentum and good energy out there. You know what Simon's like. It's obviously a very good, positive energy book. But I thought it was great. And he's done a really, really good job with the book. It's going to be a bestseller. And the reason it's going to be a bestseller, other than being a decent book, if your audience is that big and your publisher is going to go that hard on promoting it, which they will, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. It's December now when we're recording this. It's
Yeah.
out next month. You're going to see that book everywhere on every bookshelf.
It's interesting as well because I've just done a book deal and
Do you resonate with what I said about the
I mean,
publisher?
I spent forever analyzing because I really didn't want to write a book, and then I was like, if I write a book, like anything I say, if you're going to do something, like do it properly.
Yeah.
I spoke to every author I possibly could. I spoke to all the publishers. I then did a book deal, and then I ended up pulling the book deal because I was like, I think I can think about this better. I think I can write the premise better and go again. And the thing about getting a good advance, one, obviously the money is good, but like you say, the advance is to put the ball back in their court that they have to deliver on what they believed was a brilliant book. And so they have to push hard. They have to put money into editing. They have to put money into ghostwriters. They have to put money into marketing, getting it into stores, etc. And so completely resonate. And I suspect that with him, he will just sell the beginning part, which is the second most important part, which is the pre-launch of the book. Pre-launch sales determine how much marketing spend goes in, pretty much definitively. So if they see a book in pre-launch that does like 20, 30, 40,000 copies, the publisher's going, holy shit, this thing's going to be massive. Let's up our marketing spend. And then the second most important thing about a book is the fact if I read a book, like some of my favorite books ever, once I read it, I just give it to people.
Yeah, totally.
And whether I give it or I buy it for them.
Totally.
Like I read The Untethered Soul recently.
Oh, I love it. Did you?
I have quite literally had like a religious experience with that book.
That's on my list.
But I have bought it for so many people. I can't tell you.
This is explain your bloody spiritual energy right now. It's great, isn't it?
The best.
Have you read The Surrender Experiment, his other book? It's actually his first book.
But it's on my list.
You're going to love it. I gifted that book to Ali.
Really?
And he had a spiritual experience about Ali Abdaal.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just
Untethered Soul is probably better, but Surrender Experiment is his life story.
I mean, obviously we've categorized the books today, but like at the moment, I would say that's my favorite book ever.
Yeah. If we're doing a spirituality list, that's always in my top 3 of spirituality books.
Yeah. I read it. I've only had it for a couple of weeks. I've read it twice.
Really?
Yeah.
He's
I read
got
it on one plane journey. I read the whole thing.
I know we're not focusing on that book, but he's just got a couple of lines. I call them like brain harpoons. So when something says something, it's like, that's stuck in my brain forever.
Like you take a pause, you highlight, you write it down, and then you like read it again. You're like, "Doing."
Yeah. So he's got one about your brain, which is like, there's a noisy roommate inside your head.
Yeah.
And it's a fucking psycho.
Yeah.
It's messy. It shouts at you, and you can't get it to shut the up.
Yeah.
But it is your roommate.
I would say a lot of my current zen in life
comes from that book.
was coming from a variety of different things. But then I read that book and I feel like it codified loads of things for me.
Interesting.
About the internal voice.
Yeah. Oh, I've noticed that about you. This actually makes a lot more sense now, because you're a bit different this month. Now you said you've read that book, it makes a bit more sense. Okay. So my guest book was Simon Squibb's What's Your Dream?
Yeah.
What's your book?
So my guest book is a book that I have read about 1,000 times. And it was, I think, my first episode that I hosted with you of Secret Leaders, which is Daniel Priestley, which is the key person of influence. If you haven't read it, I still think it rings as true now as it did then when I read it. And it was honestly, like, I feel like I read this when I was like a kid, the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And it's very much about how if you're in any industry, if you can become known as the key person within that industry, no matter how small or niche or big or whatever, 99% of all the opportunities within that niche will come to you. And like, I would say that in my life, I've very much practiced this book. And I very much now help and advise people on how to implement this in their lives. But I feel like it was so ahead of its time as a book. Like the concept, it was kind of almost, he wasn't even speaking necessarily to begin with social media in mind. He was more talking about like thought leadership and reputation within a space. But he's completely right. Like in like these weird power laws, if you're the most well-known, specific lawyer, like maritime lawyer, and you're the most well-known one, you'll get most of the big jobs come to you first. And that's just the case of life, in all industries. So people should practice this.
Yeah, I think they say something along the lines of, attention and audience just spreads your surface area of luck.
Yeah. And he has that saying that I think he sort of altered from the really famous saying, which is like, I think the famous saying is like, everything is downstream. Everything is downstream from attention. I think he changed it to everything is downstream from lead generation.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So I think the famous saying rings true.
Yeah.
Like everything is downstream from attention. So if you build a business and you can pull attention to you, it's just top of funnel activity, isn't it? And so, yeah, I thank Dan for one, I've read all his books and I love them, but two, coming on the show.
Okay, so that is guest picks. Those are our favorite guests.
Yeah.
But this next category, getting hot?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bloody hot in these. I am committed to the cause.
Good man.
Hair's still looking quite good, on brand. Actually, it just doesn't move. It's amazing. You should see what this fucking Jufro looks
keep it
like
short
after
enough,
this.
yeah.
It's just awful. Okay, so favorite business books. I'm going to stay on brand here. Haven't brought mine. But the reason is, I have an excuse. It's slightly more niche, and the lead time on Amazon was ridiculous. And so for guests, for whoever wins our bundle, they can choose Kindle or physical or Audible, whatever's better for you. Yeah, exactly. So the book is called The Great CEO Within.
Yeah.
And it is by a coach, an entrepreneur called Matt Moshari. Matt is considered one of the best coaches to entrepreneurs in the world. He has some quite famous people that he coaches, including Brian Armstrong of Coinbase, Naval Ravikant, like a whole list of amazing people, Brian Chesky, etc., etc. So he's a serious, like top tier coach. And basically, he noticed when he was like coaching all of these people over the same time, they kind of had a very similar kind of questions, similar kind of challenges, etc. So what he did was he wrote a Word doc with the top list of questions that he asked people when he's coaching them that help unlock things. And he said that actually one of the great insights fundamentally is you've got to work through obviously processing systems, so systems that can scale, and then also just understanding how to unlock potential out of people with, kindness, decent questions, etc., etc. He's like, this stuff is so obvious. Yeah. It's like once you've worked through multi-billion-dollar founders and the scale of their problems going up and hiring hundreds and then thousands of people, managing these companies, etc., is that you realize a lot of these questions actually end up all being the same, and on a very fundamental level, they're quite human. So he wrote this doc, and it went viral, and he basically decided to turn it into a slightly larger but very succinct still book. So the book is super short. The Audible, which I've listened to as well, I've read and listened to the Audible, super short. We're talking like a few hours, 2-3 hours, and really powerful. And what's really cool is you can literally turn up on Monday. It's like a manual. You can turn up on Monday in your company and start putting some of the things into processes. So you can be like, okay, meetings. This is how we could run an efficient quarterly meeting. This is how we should run a one-to-one meeting. This is how these things cascade. So it's kind of like a how-to, but that works at any kind of level. And I found it to be very succinct, very simple, very practical, and also literally like the handbook that's used by these like incredible founders all over.
So for anyone listening, if you're in your company at the moment, it's not quite working out.
Yeah, and you're struggling as a CEO especially.
Management's not working, one-on-ones aren't working, etc. Like literally get a copy.
Yep. Or win this.
We might give you our copy.
Yep, enter this.
So my business book is The Lean Startup.
Everyone's favorite startup book.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a bit, that's like one of those things that I always find funny when people say it. It's like the reason it's so successful is it's so good. And like when people say that they don't like things that are, like over 1 million copies sold for a business book is like crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Crazy numbers.
It is, yeah.
But I like the principle because I think that like the world got to a point where like we were all so okay like spending loads of money on growth. And I feel like the principles in the book are very true about like build an MVP, minimal viable product, and put it out into the world. It's a bit like combine this book and this book together, like Priestley and Lean Startup, and you get a sense of being able to build like high margin, high scale businesses and test them for not much money, which I think is in the early stages of entrepreneurship what you should be doing. Like I understand that venture capital and those businesses require so much money, but even in those businesses, I think sometimes people could go, I'm just going to build the Lean Startup version of this thing. I'm going to like release like V1 of this thing and it costs us a couple $1,000 rather than be like, I'm going to hire a massive tech team and like build this thing and they will come. So I just feel like it's such great principled thinking about like test demand fundamentally and like work on audience before you go all in on something. So I loved reading that when I was younger because I was running an agency that was quite big. We were doing millions and millions a year, but we weren't making any profit. And so like, I reckon that book kind of brought me back from the brink of just focusing on top line growth.
Interesting.
So I would say like absolutely critical reading for all. If you're doing business internationally, you should check out Wise Business, the app for doing things in other currencies. Wise Business is the only account you need to manage your company's international money with ease. You can pay and get paid in up to 40 currencies globally without the headache of multiple accounts. Here's what makes Wise Business incredible. Fast payments, direct integration with platforms like Amazon and Stripe, and seamless connections to your accounting software. With real-time tracking and 24/7 security, your international finances stay protected and under control. Even better, there are no hidden fees, no marked up exchange rates, and no subscription costs to eat into your profits. You can get started with Wise in less time than it takes to make your morning cup of coffee, whether you're launching a new venture or scaling globally. To learn more about how Wise could work for your business, visit wise.com/business.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I read it, obviously I read it because everyone reads it and you're told you need to read it.
It's like part of the path.
100%.
Yeah.
You're not running a startup if you haven't read that book.
Yes,
that's definitely true.
Yeah.
But there's just parts of it I was just like, all right, I don't need to know how fucking Toyota run their factories. You know, it's just like the length of detail of, because they are the actual innovators of the lean process. And they did obviously change their entire business and become one of the most successful car manufacturers in the world by running a lean process, which is where he gets the inspiration from it on. But there were so many parts of it I was just like, I think when I read it, I was in such a bad place. It was so chaotic, growing so fast, and things were a complete mess in my last company, Grabble. And I read it, and I was just like,
shut up.
Yeah, fuck off.
Fuck off.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's also possibly I've just got a lot of bias from where I was in my life when I read this. And also that every time you tell somebody you got a problem, they're like, have you read this Lean Startup?
I mean,
fuck off.
It's so true. Have you read it? All I would say of the Lean Startup, of all of these books, and I'm sure my own book in the future, is that the books get padded out. Apart from the CEO one that you were talking about that I haven't read, right, is that books get padded out to make the book longer. So many books fundamentally could be like a fifth.
On that note, The Great CEO Within, I spoke to Matt, and he purposely didn't get a publisher. If you get a publisher, they force you to have a certain amount of pages because it's the amount that they can charge for the book.
Right.
So there's a minimum amount of pages you have to have a 1099 book, to have a 1499 book. And there's a minimum. So your editor and your publisher will force you to have a certain amount, even if your message is done. He chose not to have a publisher because he refused to make it any bigger than it would. And so he's self-published, which maybe explains also why it's harder to find on Amazon, but it's short, it's succinct, it gets the job done.
It is hard to find, but like, it feels strange. I feel like
the books in our studio, they're all the same size or larger.
Yeah,
there's
I
a minimum
feel like
size.
I've been told to read the book, The
Great CEO Within.
The Great CEO Within. I feel like I've been told to read that recently, like 4 or 5 times. That's the measure of a good book, though. I think nowadays, and especially in the land of like internet founders, you know, like us, I suppose, like people with a following, but also are entrepreneurs. They are so focused on pre-sales more than anything.
Yes.
But what you should focus on is like a book that's going to be handed on, because like a book should be like a pension, should be like in the background, just doing that continuously, like rolling and rolling and rolling. Whereas I see so many of these flash and pan books, but you know, these books so far have stood the test of time.
Okay.
So what is the next category? Tell us about your next book.
Right. So the next thing we've decided to do is like, you know, dealer's choice, so to speak. This time last year, pretty much specifically bang on, I went to a cabin in the woods.
Can we shout out the cabin? Unplugged for everyone watching.
Yeah.
This is not an ad.
Not an ad, just my favorite.
We just love Hector.
My favorite. Love Hector and absolutely love those cabins. And I read this book called Outlive by Peter Attia. And as you can see, it is motherfucking enormous. And also really challenging. Oh, 1 million copies as well. Bloody hell. It's in the middle, ridiculously scientific.
When did that come out?
A year ago.
That came out a year ago and sold 1 million copies.
Maybe 18 months, yeah.
I mean, that is wild in Bookland.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And he almost didn't publish it.
Very on trend, you know.
He almost didn't publish it. So he started writing this book and then he gave up on it for a few years. And then a friend basically like told him to like go and finish it and stuff. Because he talks about it in the book. So Peter Attia is a quant analyst. He's actually very interesting. So he is a guy who worked he's one of the best heart surgeons in America, and then decided that medical profession was too stressful for him, etc. And he just wanted to do something else. So he went and became like a quant analyst at like McKinsey. No, even better, at Lehman Brothers
Doesn't sound that
or something.
chill.
Right behind, right. Just and he became his specialty was subprime mortgages. And as this whole thing came out, so he became one of like the world experts or whatever. And it was super random thing. And he was like, okay, fuck all of this. Obviously, I'm in the wrong space again. And he decided to go back into health and sort of like understand the science and art of longevity. The thing about the book that I think is particularly interesting, he has a thesis that if you can map out his whole thing, by the way, is like he's a strategist. So when he was a heart surgeon and everything, he would say to people like, what do you need? And this is your care plan, and this is the strategy you need to have that. And when you're dealing with financial markets and stuff, hey, if you want to do this and you want that outcome, you have to have a strategy. Here's the strategy. So his book here is like, hey, everyone says they want to live for a long time. They'll talk about the different things, but actually, if you do that without a strategy, you're kind of on the path to nowhere. So here is a strategy for how you would live to 100 years old, for example. He has lots of really great concepts in the book, which I think can simplify a lot of the jargon and stuff that you say. One of the challenges that I've personally had in my life growing up fat is health fads. So I'm really into this and then I kind of stop. I'm really into that and then I kind of stop. And I'm always chasing
and he
this
says
sort of...
here, no diets or no focus.
There's no focus on nutrition.
Forget about diets and
he's
focus on nutritional biochemistry.
Yeah, he's got basically no focus on nutrition, and he actually, interestingly, because he's quite out there and opinionated, but he's like, nutrition is so tribal. You say go vegan, everyone says vegan shit. You go eat meat, everyone who's vegan tells you that's wrong. He's like, I can't be fucked in any of that. I'm focused on the body. So how does the body move? What does the body do? What is the biochemistry of the body? Let's leave nutrition to the nutrition experts, which is also quite nice for once, right?
Got a Brian Johnson vibe.
No, Brian Johnson's very focused on the nutrition side, right? He's fully vegan.
Yeah, but not. Oh, is he?
He's fully vegan, yeah.
Oh,
and has been fully vegan for the entirety of Blueprint.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So whereas Dr. Peters here eats meat and is like, yeah, but he's like, but you do you. Like, so find your own nutrition path. And he has this concept, which is called the centenarian decathlon. And his point is, we think about marathons and we think about the different things we want to do in our lives and therefore some short-term achievement or raising funds or whatever they might be. But most people say they want to live to 100. But actually what most people say is I want to live to 100 and have as much vitality as I can. I want to be healthy and I want to be able to do things when I'm 100 because what's the point in being sick? So he's like, if you want to do that, you need a strategy of how you're going to do that. And it doesn't just happen by accident. It happens from certain ways you move your body. So we can break down the very simple, logical process of what a centenarian would need to do. For example, if you want to be 100 and pick shopping bags up off the floor, right, then we're going to have to work on these shoulder exercises. If you want to be able to pick your great-granddaughter up and like whatever, you're going to have to do these hip hinges. And if you want to walk up the stairs unassisted at 100, this is what you need to do. So he breaks things down into a really basic way. And he says that, and this is actually one of the reasons why I'm bulking this year. I've been like trying to put on weight, and I put on 7 kilos purposefully this year, based basically on this book, because you can essentially build muscle broadly up until your 60s, and if you're lucky 70s, and in your 70s you can kind of maintain, and from 80s it's mostly atrophy, even, which means decrease, even at like best rates. So your opportunity for building most of the joint strength you need, most of the muscle strength, and all of the things you actually need is in a very long period. So he's like, most people don't look at this at all until they're 40 or 50, and you can still do it all from 50 comfortably. But actually, the earlier you start, so he says like mid-30s is a great time to start, but like really by 40, you're ahead of the game. So I read it. I was 37. I was like, all right, I'm going to be 38. That gives me 2 years to get my body prepped for this centenarian decathlon for the rest of my life by the time I'm 40.
Is that something you think about a lot?
Yeah, I think about the exercises that I do and my conscious choices in the gym and my movement choices throughout the week are all based on the Outlive program, all of them.
Wow.
So it changed my life on the basis of I've been living
You're
this
38.
38.
It's a book for you.
5 days a week I exercise, and I exercise specifically according to what I learned in that book.
Does it relate at all to you being CEO, founder, being in business? Like,
definitely CEO, founder, and dad, because the thing that I need is energy. I need lots of energy to do the 3 things. I need to feel really great. And I'd say that this year, like, I felt the best I probably felt in a long time.
You have mad energy.
Yeah, and I think I attribute a lot of it to my diet and exercise this year.
living,
Really going for it.
And of course, so much energy from heights.
And that, yeah.
This is a plug. This is not an ad. But every guest that we ever have on the show is already a customer of heights. It freaks me out to a point I can't even tell you all. It's crazy.
They got great taste.
Yeah, sure.
High performers.
Yeah, I need something to sell.
All right, so mine's Outlive. I just talked very passionately about it. What's yours?
You know what's funny about being an entrepreneur? Everyone thinks we're these super productive machines, crushing it 24/7. But here's the truth. Sometimes just finding the right file feels like a treasure hunt. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about HP's new AI PC. I'm never nervous going into a virtual first impression because this camera is amazing. The Poly Camera Pro will set you up with perfect lighting and perfect framing, even from your kitchen counter. But the best part is its AI features. It can summarize 10,000 words in seconds. Let the HP AI companion focus on the research so you can focus on doing what's most important for your business. Look, I've built and sold companies worth millions, and I'll tell you this. When you've got work to do, you don't want bad tools to slow you down. The HP OmniBook Ultra Flip isn't just another laptop. Because of its integrated AI features, it's like having an entire support team built into your computer. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, this tech actually makes a difference. It's not just fancy features, it's about giving you back time to focus on what matters, building your business. A new AI era begins with the HP OmniBook Ultra Flip. This isn't just an upgrade, it's an absolute game changer. And trust me, once you try it, you'll wonder how you ever managed without it. For 10% off, use the code HPLoveWork. That's HPLoveWork for 10% off. So my dealer's choice, my book would be, this book was given to me by a guy called Spencer, which is funny because it's like the only person ever I've fallen out with.
Oh, really?
Really, like ever. He was a mentor of mine when I was younger. He gave me this book and he was like, learn, because I wasn't the salesperson, the confident one, the front of house founder. I was like the guy doing the designs and I was the guy doing all the work. And this mentor that I had called Spencer, who fundamentally I think is actually a decent guy, he was just miffed at me not wanting to work with him as a consultant anymore. But he told me that fundamentally, if you're ever going to be a founder and a successful one, you have to learn to sell. And selling
Damn true.
is not just selling to a customer. It's not like selling over a lemonade stand. It's selling to everyone and everything the whole time, continuously, always on.
Yeah.
You know, like your team must believe the mission. Your customers must believe, like we had the guy from Castor on recently and that's coming out soon. And fundamentally, he has to get the football teams to believe that his product is better than these super established brands. And so this book is a great day one understanding that like selling is not a bad thing. It's not a bad topic. Like to be someone that sells is not a negative.
Yeah, because salespeople get a bit of a nick.
They get excited. People are like, oh, salespeople. But it's like really smart salespeople will sell to you and you'll buy the vision without knowing you're being sold 100%. To. And that's...
Do you know what? I always
magic.
notice when I go to America, because it's so different, everyone sells in America very comfortably. When I go to America, I realize what, like, as the buyer, I want them to be selling to me. I notice that, like, oh, this is great, actually. Like, I want to hear their confidence selling, and here it's just kind of a bit uncomfortable. So it makes you as the buyer a bit uncomfortable when you don't want to buy it so much.
It's something I would, like, really, really practice. Like, persuasion and convincing others is, like, a critical skill. And, like, I came from a B2B world where, like, it was all that. The whole thing was convincing someone else sitting across the table who was the custodian of a big brand to work with my tiny agency. And so, like, it became my art form, basically. But then even as time has gone on, I've built, like, the media stuff nowadays. Broadly speaking, it's kind of the same thing, but just en masse. And so I would say to young founders, I can't, out of all the books, say that if I was to give you one book, I'd give you any other book than this one. Because this is, like, this is an internal thing that you do. You learn how to be persuasive, like you learn how to be convincing. And I think that carries through all marketing, all personal brand, everything. And so, like, give it a go.
That's a solid pitch. Clearly just sold it pretty well.
Read the book.
Sold. Okay, next category, final category. Okay, can I go first, actually?
You're up.
This category is mindset, and my choice is Grit by Angela Duckworth. Two things to say. One is that I've invited Angela Duckworth onto the show many times. She has declined.
Angela, if you're watching,
Angela, come
we
on.
have relaunched the show. There's now 2 of us.
And now there's at least one representative genius on the show.
I'm not sure about that, but we are certainly growing fast. Podcast is being listened to by thousands of people.
And we're gritty. We're gritty as fuck.
So come on and talk to us about grit.
Okay, so my story about grit, this is completely true, no hyperbole, down the lens. It changed my life. So
The book?
Yeah. So I was in a really, really bad place. Very depressed, very anxious, and very lost after my last business Scrabble. And I felt really sorry for myself. And I very randomly, there's a guy called Azim Azar. I don't know if you know him. He writes something called The Exponential View. And my friends, he was like, and he knew that I was in this bad place. And he's like, I had nothing to do. I was out of a job. And I was just looking for something. And he was like, there's a talk at the Welcome Center today by a guy called Martin Seligman, who is a psychologist on positive psychology. You should go. It's about positive psychology. You're down in the dumps. Maybe it's a good thing. And I was like, oh, fuck it. Well, I've got nothing else to do. I'll go. So I went down to the Welcome Center. I went to see this guy, Martin Seligman, who is actually a very, very famous, he's probably more famous than Angela Duckworth. And he was her teacher. So he is the founding father of something called positive psychology. And the concept of that is anti-Freudian. Freudian psychology is you're stuck with the brain you're born with. So it's your genetics, it's your past, all this kind of shit. And Martin Seligman's psychology, which is positive, is all about actually, no, you can change your brain. You just got to think positive thoughts and you've got to focus on the next thing, and your brain is plastic and you can change it, etc. And his student was Angela Duckworth. I went to that talk and I was like, well, that was actually quite interesting, whatever. And they were selling some books afterwards and everyone kept saying, this book's great. And so I picked it up and I bought it and I went home and I read it and it categorically changed my life because the book does an exceptionally, she's a gifted writer. She is a gifted scientist and she does an incredible job of explaining. It was probably the first science book I ever read in my life. And she does an incredible job of explaining how she can essentially predict the success of a human being, of people in high-performing situations. She has the Marines, the SAS, all this kind of stuff, right? Outside of just CEOs and business people, which she also does. And she can almost always tell whether or not they're going to be successful, or they're going to make it through Hell Week, for example, or anything like that. She came up with the process of testing these things so fast with such high probability that she ended up working with the US government just to kind of predict who the most gritty, hardcore and capable people are. And it's not all about muscle or anything. It's just about your attitude. If you get hit in the face, are you able to get back up again? Are you able to just wipe that dirt off and just get back on the horse and just go again? And she has this constant story after story, scientific study after scientific study, more importantly, of how the correlation between successful people and your ability to just go for something, whether or not you're successful, it's actually irrelevant. How you respond to it is all that matters. And she did such a compelling job of that. I basically got myself out of a hole and was like, fuck it. Yeah, I've just been hit in the face. That's my example right now. That's publicly. Just happened to me. Yeah, it's really embarrassing. I'm ready to go again. It was like a wake up call, a jolt. I was like, that's it. Boom. So Andrew, if you're watching, thank you. That book absolutely changed my life. It helped me get back on the horse and I feel I always come back to it.
It's thorough. I would say, I read it.
It's a very good
description. I read it at a good time and it's really fucking thorough.
It's robust.
Yeah, you're going to want to sit, make notes, think deeply about it. It's not like a flash in the pan book.
Yeah.
It's a real understanding of your own resilience over a long period of time. So yeah, I'm huge fan. I haven't read that for a long time. I read that again in a bad period of my life and I feel like it was really useful.
I'd quite like to read it now. I'm in a good period of my life. I wonder how I'd respond. So what's your book? This is the final book of our Christmas giveaway. What have you got for us?
You're going to be oh, you're such a cliche.
Oh, I love this book.
Yeah.
It's another book that changed my life in fairness, but I never lived to practice. But
anyone who knows me will know that this, it's become part of my personality, which is I'm a big believer in what has come before us no longer fits the world now. I don't believe that everything we've been told about our lives and the way we should work and the way we should like grow up is right, and I feel like we should be fundamentally aiming at different things. And that's why like anyone who knows me knows that like I work very hard in the time that I work, but when I don't work, I'm completely offline and like completely non-working. And I feel like some people forget how to do that. And I think it's because they're taking a break from the thing that they do, and the thing that they do is work. Whereas I feel like if you really, really think about it, all you should be doing is creating the ability to have more non-working time. And yeah, if you love your work, then that's the benefit. And I would say I like my work. But 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, I feel like conceptually is a very strong principled thinking for entrepreneurs and employees about like how to structure your life for the things that you really care about. Like I always find it's very strange that the question we ask each other when we go out is like, what do you do? Whereas it's like, what are you passionate about? What are you interested in? Like, you know, what is life outside of work for you? Are just so much more fascinating as questions.
I actually really try when I meet someone new to say, what are your interests?
Same. And nowadays, like if someone says to me, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I work in marketing. And like, if you get that out of the way quick, you can get on to talk about loads of really interesting shit, rather than for like someone like you and me who, you know, are annoying entrepreneurs, would just like say the same nonsense about what we do over and over and over again. And so I feel like it's principled thinking about like leverage, about time off, about like why throughout the year you should actually try and have as much time off as possible. It's like a game. How little can I work to how much can I make? And there's nothing wrong with aiming to make lots of money in a short period of time. You know, you don't have to change the world, but I would say that book was definitely a defining factor. And I would say for the books that I suggested, you know, when writing my own book, you think a lot about the books you've read and what's impacted you. I would say that those books would be like a precursor to, I think, what I'm writing.
Yeah, I am like such an avid reader. I feel one of the biggest impact areas of my life. So this journey probably started with Grit, but I read about 50 books a year.
Wow.
Because I read about one a week on Audible by just walking or being in the car, doing drop-offs or whatever. And so I get through about a book a week, and I'm really quite deliberate about broadly, like very little fiction. I'm quite deliberate on self-help categories across spirituality, finance, inspiration, business, etc. But on a conscious level, book by book, I think it's really valuable to do that. But on a more macro level, I really strongly believe that your output is completely driven by your inputs. So my logic is, if I'm constantly filling my ears and therefore head with all of these like brilliant ideas, whether I'm like really putting every single one of them into action or not, my output is so much more thorough and sharp around these kind of concepts. Like whether it's conscious or subconscious, that's going to be happening. And so your process, like you say, of writing a book, the most obvious thing to do is to read great books. If you read great books, your output is going to be more likely to write a great book.
I thought as well, because I'm not a huge reader of loads of books. I actually read a lot of fiction books. And I have recently reread 2 of my favorite books ever, which are non-business books. But I read recently Cain and Abel.
Never read it.
Which
Is that Jeffrey Archer?
is just the most phenomenal book and story ever. It's
Is
a
it?
huge book.
Who is
It's
it?
a great Christmas book, Jeffrey Archer.
Oh, it is it.
Great Christmas book.
I've never read it.
And then The Count of Monte Cristo. Like, just the most fantastic Christmas books if you're going away. So
Never read either.
I'm not a huge business book reader, but the ones I have read, I think, have been transformative. So let me explain exactly how you can get hold of the entire Secret Leaders book collection. We've tried to make it as simple as possible, so I'm going to talk you through some of the things that you need to do to get hold of this whole collection for free this Christmas. The first thing we need you to do is make sure that you like this video. The second thing that we need you to do is make sure that you're subscribed to our channel. And the third thing, most importantly, that we need you to do is to make a comment in the comment section of this video telling us what your 2025 goals are. If you do all 3 of these things, we can consider you for the Secret Leaders book giveaway.
And if you're a listener, and obviously you might have been with me for a few years, so I really appreciate you sticking with us, please do come over to the YouTube channel so that you can join and enter this amazing giveaway as well. We are wrapping it up in just 4 days. So from the episode going live, it's going to end pretty quickly. We're going to be, I think the last day to enter is on the 23rd. We're going to be picking a winner on the 24th. So you get this, the vibe of winning just in time for Christmas, and try and be specific. We want to know what your goals are. We're actually going to engage in this. We're really genuinely interested in your goals for 2025. So head over to our Secret Leaders channel. Make sure that you are following at Secret Leaders.
Give us a like.
Give us a like. Give us a subscribe.
Give us a comment.
Give us a comment.
Tell us the 2025
Be kind.
plans.
'Tis the season for giving, after all. Chris, you want to put your hat back on before we say goodbye to people?
No, I don't.
Cool. And one of the books is only going to be available digitally, obviously, which is The Great CEO Within, as we mentioned. But hey.
I want to say thank you as well. Obviously, I joined the show this year. It's been awesome. I've had so much fun. It was my favorite podcast. And so to be here has been a privilege. And it's so good to see you all. Our big focus at the moment, as you will all know from the episodes, is growing our YouTube channel. And so please make sure you're subscribed, give this a like, and comment your 2025 goals. And the lucky winner will get the Secret Leaders book collection.
That's right. From Christmas Donnelly and Dan Morisata, this is Secret Leaders.
Thank you very much.